Back into 623, and we've reported on this before. Inflation continues to go up. Consumer prices rose by 7% last month over the previous year. It's the fastest increase since the early 1980s. The latest consumer price index data released on Wednesday by the Bureau of Labor Statistics marks the third consecutive month in which the index, a measure of what consumers pay for goods and services, rose by more than 6%. Shelter, used cars, and trucks were the biggest contributors to the price increase, along with food. So when are we going to see these prices go back down? When will inflation slow? Those are some of the big questions a lot of families are asking this morning. And joining us now to talk more about this is Dave Anderson, managing partner with Moneywise Wealth Management. Dave, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning, Alex.
Okay, so we see this report, and it is discouraging for so many Americans because we have been at this for so many months now. This is the third consecutive month where we've seen inflation increase. A lot of people are feeling the pinch right now. What is driving this? There are so many things that politicians, economists, they all point their fingers at, but what is truly behind the reason why we're seeing inflation across this country continue to go up?
Yeah, good question. You know, what has been lost, I think, on some of the discussion is the complexity of inflation. A lot of people want to say, hey, it's just one thing. It's the president and spending, or it's supply chain issues. And everyone's, as you say, is pointing the finger when the reality is it's all of those things. It's government spending. It has been supply chain disruptions. You have consumers who have had cash and have wanted to spend it. And then in certain areas like used cars, we're seeing inflation like we've never seen. I mean, used cars are up 37% over the past year. And so that is having an inordinate amount of impact on these inflation numbers.
Is this just an American issue, or are all parts of the world seeing some sort of inflation?
Yeah, there was a recent study that came out looking at 40 countries. U.S. was certainly close to the top of that in terms of inflation. So it's really bad in the U.S., but it's not isolated just in the U.S. We're seeing worse inflation in Brazil, Turkey, and then in other parts of the world, we're seeing inflation, not as much as the U.S., but yes, it is a global issue.
No, you talked about a lot of people not spending a ton of money during the worst of or at least at the beginning of this pandemic. So there was kind of this pent-up demand to spend. Yeah, or this morning, though, we have a new report that shows that retail spending actually fell almost 2% compared to the month before. You know, that's the time when people usually spend all of their money during the holiday season. We saw industries like retail fell. We saw restaurant spending fell. And we actually saw online spending fall almost by 9%. So why are we seeing all of a sudden people not spending this money? Is this because of the Omicron variant and people going back into quarantine?
It could be a little bit of Omicron for sure. Inflation is playing a role here. You know, as things cost more, people are starting to say, you know what, I'm feeling this now. It's not something that's just being reported on the news. When I go to fill up my car, I feel this pain, and that is causing them as well to kind of close up their wallets and say, you know, maybe I'm going to hold off a little bit and see if prices come down. And that you know, really hurts the economy when you have people slowing down their spending. Our economy is driven by consumers and their spending. So seeing that slow down is certainly not a great sign economically.
So we've seen inflation at the highest point in 40 years. At what point, I mean, this has got to correct itself, right?
Yeah, for sure. You know, and we're going to see continued supply chain disruptions, but ultimately they are going to work themselves out. You know, we know how to make cars. We just don't have enough now. And the reason why we don't have enough is you have factories across the globe that have been shut because of COVID. So as those things open up and we can start to make more cars and meet this demand, we will start to see prices come down. So I don't think this is going to last forever, but people are feeling it now, and it will probably last a little bit longer than we hope it's going to last.
I'm short on time, but I got to ask you really quick because I think a lot of people are wanting a timeline. Do you think that this year things could get better?
I think we're going to continue to see inflation this year, but probably not at the same rate as last year. In fact, this recent report, even though it set new records, it increased at a slower rate than we saw in August and September. So I do think we are getting a little bit better, but it's going to last throughout this year.
Maybe hinting at a possible plateau at least. That is at least some good news, the silver lining there. Dave Anderson, as always, thanks so much for joining us. Do appreciate it.
You bet, my pleasure.
All right, news continues next.